What could drive a man to decimate his entire family and then vanish without a trace? This chilling question takes us back to the heart of suburbia in the late 20th century, to the life of a man named John List, a man who on the surface seemed to embody the very essence of the American dream. John List, a devout Lutheran and respected member of his community, was a figure of stability and moral integrity. He lived with his wife Helen and their 3 children, Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick, in a grand Victorian mansion aptly named Breeze Knoll. Their life was one of seeming affluence and respectability, a perfect picture of suburban bliss. The List family was known for their active involvement within the church and the local community, upholding an image of a wholesome, all-American family. On Sundays, the List family could be seen occupying their usual pew at the local church. John List, a stern figure with a quiet demeanor, was always impeccably dressed, his children polite and well-behaved. His wife Helen, a delicate woman with a warm smile, was known for her charity work. They were the epitome of a loving, close-knit family, a beacon of virtue in their community. Yet, on one fateful day in November, this idyllic image was shattered. The bodies of the List family were discovered within the walls of their beloved family home. The community was left reeling, unable to reconcile the horrific scene with the family they thought they knew. John List, the man they respected, the man they trusted, was nowhere to be found. The patriarch, the churchgoer, the community member had vanished, leaving behind a gruesome tableau of his once vibrant family. As shockwaves ran through the community, a chilling question echoed in their minds. What could drive a man to decimate his entire family and then vanish without a trace? But behind the well-maintained facade, darkness was brewing. And as the investigation began, the true depth of this darkness started to emerge, forever marring the image of the seemingly perfect family and the man who had been at its helm. As the community was left in shock, the unimaginable truth began to unravel. The once seemingly peaceful home of the List family was now a grim tableau of horror, a crime scene that bore testament to the unthinkable atrocity committed within its walls. The authorities arrived to a chilling sight. The family, once full of life, were now lifeless, methodically lined up as though in a macabre family portrait. The crime had been carried out with an eerie precision, a testament to the meticulous planning that had gone into it. Indeed, it was not a crime of passion, but rather a premeditated act of cold-blooded murder. John List, the man everyone knew as a devout churchgoer, a loving father and a devoted husband, had not only meticulously planned and executed the murder of his entire family, but had also left behind a letter. The note, addressed to his pastor, was a chilling confession, explaining his actions in a manner that shook everyone to their core. In the letter, List wrote of his belief that he was saving his family from spiritual damnity. He expressed his fear that the world was corrupting the purity of his family, and his desperate attempt to preserve their innocence was to send them to heaven before they could be tainted. It was a twisted justification, a horrifying testament to the lengths he was willing to go in the name of his misguided beliefs. The crime scene was a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect family facade. As the details emerged, the community was left grappling with the reality of what had transpired. The shock was palpable, the disbelief overwhelming. A family had been wiped out, not by a random act of violence, but by one of their own. In the aftermath of this horrifying act, one question remained. Where was John List? The man who had committed such a heinous act had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a crime scene, a chilling letter, and a community in shock. The hunt for John List had only just begun. A nationwide manhunt for John List began, but the cunning murderer had left no trace. The authorities were up against a wall. They had a name, a face, a crime scene, but no suspect. The man who was once a part of the community, the church, the family, had disappeared as if he were never there. The initial investigation was a labyrinth of dead ends and false leads. List had planned his escape meticulously, leaving behind a slate so clean it was almost as if he'd wiped his entire existence off the face of the earth. The authorities were grappling with the enormity of the task at hand, finding a man who seemingly did not want to be found. Theories began to circulate, each more outlandish than the last. Was List hiding at a plain sight, living a normal life under an assumed identity? Had he fled the country, taking refuge in some far-flung corner of the globe? Or had he met a more sinister end, perhaps at his own hands, a final act of cowardice to escape the consequences of his actions? Each lead was pursued with relentless determination, yet all roads led to nowhere. The investigation was a painstaking process. Every shred of evidence was examined, every possible connection explored. But with each passing day, the trail grew colder. The manhunt was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands, elusive, frustrating, and ultimately futile. What made it even more challenging was the absence of any discernible motive. Why had List, a seemingly devoted family man, committed such a heinous act? The question haunted the investigators, adding an extra layer of complexity to an already confounding case. Despite the best efforts of the authorities, the manhunt yielded little results. As the months turned into years and years into decades, the fervor of the chase began to wane. The case, once the talk of the town, began to fade into the annals of forgotten crimes. As years turned into decades, the case went cold and John List seemed to have vanished into thin air. In a twist of fate, an unexpected break in the case came from a place no one expected. The John List case had gone cold, and it seemed as though List had vanished into thin air. But years later, the relentless pursuit of justice breathed new life into this chilling tale. In the late 80s, a new tool in the fight against crime emerged on the scene. A television show named America's Most Wanted, which profiled fugitives and appealed to the public for information. Recognizing the potential of this new platform, investigators decided to reopen the List case and took it to the show's producers. In May of 1990, America's Most Wanted aired an episode featuring the List family murders. They used age progression technology to create a sculpture of what List might look like after 18 years on the run. Little did they know this would prove to be instrumental in cracking the case wide open. Meanwhile, a man named Robert Clark was leading an ordinary life in Richmond, Virginia. He was a well-respected accountant, active in his church, and married to a woman he met at a social gathering. But Robert Clark was not who he claimed to be. As millions tuned into America's Most Wanted, a woman in Denver recognized the sculpture as her former neighbor, Robert Clark. She remembered him as an odd but harmless man, and had no idea about the dark secret he was hiding. Prompted by her suspicion, she made a call to the authorities, setting in motion the final events of this long-drawn saga. The authorities descended on the quiet Virginia suburb. Robert Clark, the man who had lived a quiet life for the past 18 years, was none other than John List. His carefully constructed facade crumbled as his true identity was revealed. After 18 years on the run, John List's past finally caught up with him. This chilling tale of deception serves as a stark reminder that even in the most unsuspecting places, justice has a way of catching up. Caught and convicted, justice was served, but did it bring closure? John List, the man who sent shockwaves through the community, was finally caught and convicted. The courtroom was a chilling atmosphere, a stark contrast to the man who appeared so ordinary, so commonplace. List was tried and convicted for the murder of his entire family, a crime so heinous it's hard to comprehend. The jury deliberated, their faces etched with the weight of the decision they had to make. In the end, they returned a verdict that echoed the sentiments of the community, guilty on all counts. But did this verdict bring closure to a community still reeling from the shock of such a brutal crime? On the surface, it may have seemed so. There was a collective sigh of relief, a sense of justice being served, but the scars ran deep. The memory of the List family, their lives cut short in such a tragic manner, cast a long shadow over the community. This case was not just about the crime, but also about the man behind it. Psychologists delved into List's mind, trying to unravel the complexities that led to such a monstrous act. They pointed to financial troubles, his strict upbringing, and his inability to accept failure as possible triggers. But these explanations did little to soothe the pain of those left behind. The surviving relatives and the community had to grapple with the aftermath of the tragedy. The empty house stood as a grim reminder of the family that once lived there, their lives snuffed out in an instant. The community was left to pick up the pieces, to try and make sense of the senseless. As we reflect on this case, we are reminded of the chilling fact that evil can hide in plain sight. It can be cloaked in the guise of a family man, a churchgoer, a neighbor. John List's case remains a chilling reminder of this unsettling truth. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your theories in the comments below and be sure to like, share and subscribe.